Have you ever wondered why your blood sugar levels sometimes rise inexplicably, even when you're only eating vegetables? The shocking truth your doctor may not have told you is that some of the healthiest vegetables in your fridge might be silently sabotaging your glycemic control. Today, I will reveal the definitive list of the 14 vegetables that people with diabetes, especially those over 40, need to consume with caution or even avoid. And the best part, I will show you not only which vegetables to avoid, but also share safe and delicious alternatives that you can enjoy without worry. Did you know that some of the most common vegetables on our table can be real villains for those living with diabetes? It's as if there's a secret code hidden in certain greens, especially those high in starch. Let's unravel this mystery, starting with 3 popular vegetables that deserve special attention: white potatoes, cassava, and yams. White potatoes, for example, are as versatile as they are treacherous for those needing to keep their glucose levels under control. With a surprisingly high glycemic index of 85, where any value above 70 is considered high, they can raise blood sugar faster than a spoonful of refined sugar. Imagine this: a medium serving of cooked potatoes, about 150 g, can contain up to 30 g of carbohydrates, the equivalent of 6 teaspoons of sugar. Cassava, also known as manioc in some regions of Brazil, is another vegetable that warrants caution. Rich in resistant starch, it has a glycemic index of 78 and can contain up to 38 g of carbohydrates per 100 g serving. What many people with diabetes do not realize is that cassava can elevate blood glucose more prolongedly than other starchy vegetables due to its complex molecular structure. Yams, often confused with sweet potatoes, complete our trio of starch-rich vegetables. With a glycemic index of 54, moderate, it might seem like a safer option, but it still requires attention. A 100 g serving of yam contains approximately 27 g of carbohydrates, which are converted into glucose during digestion. The most intriguing aspect of these vegetables is how they affect different people with diabetes in distinct ways. Some individuals may experience more pronounced glucose spikes after consumption, while others have more moderate responses. The key lies in individual monitoring and understanding how your own body reacts to these foods. Combining small portions with proteins and good fats can help slow down sugar absorption. Additionally, some preparation techniques, such as cooking and cooling, which increases resistant starch, can make these foods a bit more diabetes-friendly. When we think of corn, that golden, juicy cob often brings to mind pleasant and festive moments. However, for those living with diabetes, this widely consumed cereal deserves special attention. What many don't know is that corn, in all its forms, can pose a real challenge for glycemic control. The seemingly harmless kernel of corn carries a surprising nutritional secret. A single medium-sized ear can contain about 28 g of carbohydrates, the equivalent of approximately 7 teaspoons of sugar. But what makes corn particularly challenging for people with diabetes is not just its carbohydrate content, but its unique starch composition that can quickly raise blood glucose levels. Canned corn presents an additional challenge. Beyond the natural carbohydrates of the kernel, the canning process often adds sugars and sodium. A cup of canned corn can contain up to 32 g of carbohydrates, not to mention the added sodium, which can affect blood pressure, an extra concern for many people with diabetes. Corn cream, in turn, represents an even more concentrated form of these carbohydrates. With a glycemic index of 75, it can cause significant spikes in blood sugar. Just half a cup of corn cream contains approximately 22 g of carbohydrates, but the real problem is the speed at which these carbohydrates are converted into blood sugar. The most intriguing aspect of corn is how it has become an omnipresent ingredient in the food industry. Did you know that high-fructose corn syrup, a common derivative of corn, is present in countless processed products? This ingredient can be particularly problematic for people with diabetes, as it is metabolized differently than ordinary sugar. For those who do not want to completely give up the taste of corn, there are smart consumption strategies. For example, combining a small portion of corn with lean proteins and fibers can help slow the absorption of carbohydrates. Additionally, opting for varieties like baby corn or super sweet corn in very small portions can be an occasional alternative. But what to do when the craving for that characteristic flavor is strong? There are some creative alternatives that can satisfy this craving without compromising diabetes control. For example, grilled mushrooms with spices can offer a similar satisfaction in terms of texture and flavor. Who would have thought that the innocent carrot on your plate could transform completely depending on how you prepare it? The difference between a raw carrot and a cooked carrot in their impact on diabetes is as surprising as it is revealing. It's as if there are two completely different versions of the same vegetable living in our kitchen. A raw carrot, with its delicious crunch and natural sweetness, has a relatively low glycemic index of 16. However, something almost magical or concerning, depending on your point of view, happens when we apply heat. When cooked, the glycemic index of a carrot can jump to an impressive 49 points. For people with diabetes, this difference can mean a lot in terms of glycemic control. But what exactly happens during the cooking process? It's fascinating. The heat breaks down the cell walls of the carrot, making its natural sugars much more accessible to our digestive system. It's as if cooking unlocks the vault where the sugars were stored. A cup of cooked carrots contains approximately 12 g of carbohydrates, but the speed at which these carbohydrates are converted into glucose is significantly higher compared to the raw version. What many people with diabetes may not know is that the cooking method can also make a big difference. For example, carrots cooked lightly by steaming retain more of their original properties than those boiled for a long time. Cooking time is also crucial. The longer the carrot is cooked, the higher its glycemic index rises. Interestingly, the temperature at which you serve cooked carrots can also impact their effect on blood sugar levels. Cooked carrots that are then cooled tend to have a less dramatic impact on blood sugar levels, thanks to the formation of resistant starch during the cooling process. For those who love carrots but need to maintain glycemic control, there are smart strategies. For example, you can grate raw carrots into salads, make sticks for snacking, or include them in mixed preparations where the individual portion of carrot is smaller. Adding a bit of good fat, like olive oil or avocado, can help slow down the absorption of sugars. A lesser-known trick is to use baby carrots, which tend to have a lower sugar content than mature carrots. Additionally, due to their smaller size, it is easier to control portions. When prepared with aromatic herbs like thyme or rosemary, they can become a delicious side dish without significantly compromising your glucose levels. Anyone who has been captivated by the vibrant and characteristic color of beets should know that behind that stunning visual lies a complex story, especially for those living with diabetes. This seemingly innocent vegetable contains one of the highest levels of natural sugar among all vegetables, a fact that might even surprise the most experienced in nutrition. Beets have a glycemic index of 64, considered moderate to high, but what really stands out is their natural sugar content. In just 100 grams of raw beet, there are approximately 8 grams of sugar, more than many other vegetables. For people with diabetes, this means that beets need to be consumed wisely and strategically. What makes beets particularly intriguing is their unique composition of betaine and bioactive compounds. While these elements offer impressive benefits for cardiovascular health, crucial for people with diabetes, we also need to balance these benefits with their impact on blood sugar levels. It's like having a superhero with a bit of a villainous side. But here's a fascinating detail few know. The way beets are prepared can make a significant difference in their glycemic impact. When consumed raw and grated, for example, beets have a lesser impact on blood sugar levels compared to their cooked version. This is because the cooking process breaks down the vegetable's fibers, making sugars more readily available for absorption. For those who do not want to completely give up this nutritious vegetable, there are smart consumption strategies. For instance, adding raw grated beet in small amounts to salads rich in fiber such as lettuce or kale and good fats like avocado and olive oil can help slow the absorption of sugar. A safe portion for people with diabetes generally should not exceed half a cup of grated beet per meal. A lesser-known trick is to use beet leaves, which are rich in nutrients and have a much lower impact on blood glucose. These can be prepared sautéed, as you would with kale or spinach, offering a nutritious and safer alternative for those needing to control their blood sugar. The timing of consumption also makes a difference. Consuming beets after a meal rich in proteins and fibers, for example, can help moderate their impact on blood glucose. Some people with diabetes report that they tolerate beets better when they consume them right after physical exercise, when insulin sensitivity is naturally increased. When we think of pumpkin, that vibrant and comforting orange color comes to mind, doesn't it? But for those living with diabetes, this seemingly harmless vegetable hides some surprises that need to be considered. Mature pumpkin, especially certain specific varieties, can be sweeter than many might imagine, posing a challenge for glycemic control. What many people don't know is that there are different types of pumpkin, and each variety has a unique profile of sugars and carbohydrates. For example, a fully ripe butternut squash can contain up to 10 g of carbohydrates per 100 g, while some Japanese varieties have even higher levels. For people with diabetes, this difference can be crucial in meal planning. A fascinating aspect of pumpkin is how its sugar content increases as it matures. It's as if it has a natural sweetness timer. A very ripe pumpkin can have almost double the sugar content of a less ripe one. The glycemic index of ripe pumpkin can vary between 65 and 75, depending on the variety and degree of ripeness. Opting for less mature pumpkins or naturally less sweet varieties, such as the Paulista or green kabocha, can be a safer alternative. These varieties tend to have a lower impact on blood glucose. A little-known trick is how the method of preparation can significantly affect the impact of pumpkin on blood sugar levels. Cooking pumpkin al dente, for example, results in a slower release of sugars compared to prolonged cooking. Moreover, combining pumpkin with proteins and good fats can help moderate its effect on blood sugar. Surprisingly, pumpkin seeds are an excellent option for people with diabetes. Rich in protein, healthy fats, and very low in carbohydrates, they can be a nutritious addition that helps control appetite and blood sugar levels. A serving of 2 tablespoons of roasted pumpkin seeds can be a great snack between meals. For those who love the taste of pumpkin but need to be cautious, there are creative ways to enjoy this vegetable. For example, mixing small amounts of pumpkin with other less sweet vegetables in a stir-fry or soup can provide the desired flavor without causing significant changes in blood glucose. The key is moderation and smart pairing with other foods. Who hasn't opened a can of peas for a quick recipe, right? However, what many people with diabetes may not know is that there's a world of difference between fresh peas and their processed version. It's as if processing completely transforms the nutritional profile of this popular vegetable in our kitchens. Canned peas, for example, undergo a preservation process that can significantly alter their glycemic index. While fresh peas have a moderate glycemic index of 48, their canned versions can reach up to 65 due to processing. This occurs because the canning process breaks down some of the natural fibers in peas, making their carbohydrates more rapidly available for absorption. A surprising fact about canned peas is their sodium content. 1 cup of canned peas can contain up to 440 milligrams of sodium, nearly 20% of the daily recommendation. For people with diabetes, who often need to monitor their blood pressure as well, this is an additional factor of concern. Furthermore, many brands add sugars during the preservation process, making the product even less suitable for those who need to control their blood glucose. Frozen peas, on the other hand, present a different challenge. Although they generally retain more nutrients than canned peas, the process of freezing and thawing can affect their cellular structure. When thawed and cooked, they tend to have a higher glycemic index than fresh peas, although still lower than canned. Here's an interesting fact few know. The timing of pea harvesting significantly affects their sugar content. More mature peas tend to have more starch and less sugar, while very young peas have more simple sugars. In industrial processing, there is rarely control over this factor, which can result in products with quite variable glycemic profiles. For those who still want to enjoy the nutritional benefits of peas without compromising diabetes control, there are smart strategies. For example, opt for fresh or unseasoned frozen peas and prepare them at home with natural spices. A suitable portion would be about 1/3 of a cup, always combined with proteins and good fats to slow down the absorption of carbohydrates. A creative alternative is to use dried split peas, which have a lower glycemic index due to their high fiber content. When properly prepared, they can be a safer option for people with diabetes, especially in soups and purees where other low glycemic index vegetables can be added. Who hasn't turned to that practical can of preserved vegetables for a quick meal? At first glance, they seem like a practical and healthy option. However, for people with diabetes, these seemingly convenient foods hide a worrying combination of ingredients that can significantly complicate glycemic control. The traditional preservation process often adds a surprising amount of sodium to vegetables. For example, a cup of preserved carrots can contain up to 600 milligrams of sodium. This is more than 25% of the recommended daily amount. For people with diabetes, who often also need to control their blood pressure, this excess sodium can be particularly problematic. But the real challenge doesn't stop there. Many preserved vegetables contain added sugars to balance the acidity of the vinegar or enhance the flavor. A surprising fact is that a single serving of preserved beets can contain up to 8 g of added sugar, not counting the natural sugars already present in the vegetable. For those living with diabetes, these extra sugars can cause unexpected spikes in blood glucose. The preservation process also significantly alters the structure of the vegetable fibers. During processing, both soluble and insoluble fibers are partially broken down, which not only reduces their benefits for digestive health, but also accelerates the absorption of the carbohydrates present. This is a crucial detail that many people with diabetes are unaware of. An interesting discovery is how different preservation methods distinctly affect vegetables. For example, naturally fermented preserves, like authentic sauerkraut, may have a lesser impact on blood sugar and even offer probiotic benefits. However, these are rarely found in common commercial preserves. One option is to make homemade preserves, where you can control the amount of salt and eliminate sugar completely. A basic recipe might include apple cider vinegar, filtered water, aromatic herbs, and a minimal amount of sea salt. A little-known trick is how to reduce the sodium content of commercial preserves. Soaking the vegetables in filtered water for about 30 minutes before consumption can significantly reduce their sodium content. However, it's important to note that this technique does not remove the added sugars. Who would have thought that this crunchy and refreshing vegetable, often praised for its low-calorie content, could hide important secrets for people with diabetes? Celery, seemingly one of the safest vegetables for glycemic control, presents some surprising peculiarities when consumed in larger quantities. What many people do not know is that celery contains natural compounds that can interact with certain diabetes medications. One such compound is furanocoumarin, which can affect how the body metabolizes some commonly prescribed medications for blood sugar control. In high doses, this can result in unpredictable blood sugar levels. The sodium content of celery is another often overlooked aspect. Although it is a natural vegetable, 1 cup of celery contains approximately 80 milligrams of sodium. This may seem small, but when consumed in large amounts, such as in detox juices or concentrated preparations, sodium can quickly accumulate. For people with diabetes who also monitor their blood pressure, this is an important factor to consider. A fascinating fact about celery is its interaction with medications like metformin, one of the most prescribed drugs for type 2 diabetes. Excessive consumption of celery can potentially alter the absorption of this medication, affecting its efficacy. Studies suggest that active compounds in celery can compete with certain metabolic pathways used by these drugs. For those using insulin, excessive consumption of celery can present another interesting challenge. Some people report that large amounts of celery can temporarily affect insulin sensitivity, although the exact mechanisms are not yet fully understood by science. The good news is that there are safe ways to enjoy the benefits of this nutritious vegetable. The recommendation for people with diabetes is to limit consumption to 1 to 2 stalks per day, preferably not concentrated in juices or extracts. When consumed in this way, celery can be an excellent addition to low-carbohydrate meals. A little-known trick is to combine celery with healthy fats, such as tahini or avocado, which not only improves the absorption of its fat-soluble vitamins, but also helps moderate any potential effect on sodium levels and interaction with medications. That crispy breaded zucchini or golden fried eggplant may seem like a delicious way to enjoy vegetables. But for those living with diabetes, frying transforms these healthy foods into a real challenge for glycemic control. Many do not realize how the frying process dramatically alters the nutritional profile of these vegetables. Take the classic example of French fries. A medium serving of 100 g of French fries can contain up to 35 g of carbohydrates and add 320 calories to your meal. But the real problem is not just the numbers. It's the combination of the high glycemic index of the potato with the fats from frying that creates a perfect storm for blood sugar levels. The frying process causes a fascinating transformation in vegetables. When immersed in hot oil, the complex carbohydrates are partially broken down, becoming more rapidly available for absorption. Additionally, the layer of flour or batter used in most fried preparations adds a significant amount of refined carbohydrates, a particularly challenging combination for people with diabetes. A less discussed aspect is how frying affects insulin resistance. Oils heated at high temperatures can create compounds that, when consumed regularly, contribute to increased inflammation in the body and potentially worsen insulin resistance. A single serving of fried vegetables can elevate blood glucose levels for several hours after consumption. An air fryer, for example, can create similar textures with minimal oil use. Zucchini prepared in an air fryer with a thin layer of almond flour and seasonings can provide that crunchy satisfaction without compromising glycemic control as much. Here's a little-known trick. Marinating vegetables in vinegar or lemon before cooking can help reduce the formation of harmful compounds during cooking. Additionally, using alternative flours such as chickpea or almond flour for breading can result in a lower impact on blood glucose. The temperature of the oil also makes a crucial difference. When the oil is not hot enough, the vegetable absorbs more fat, further worsening its nutritional profile. On the other hand, oil that's too hot can create harmful compounds that increase oxidative stress in the body, another concern for people with diabetes. Who doesn't love a creamy, comforting mash? However, for people with diabetes, this smooth and inviting texture hides a metabolic trap that few are aware of. The process of transforming vegetables into mash, especially those rich in starch like potatoes and cassava, fundamentally changes how our body processes their carbohydrates. When we turn a potato or cassava into mash, we are essentially predigesting the food. The mechanical process of mashing breaks down the cellular structures of the vegetable, making the carbohydrates much more accessible to the digestive system. To put it into context, a cup of mashed potatoes can have a glycemic index of up to 83, significantly higher than the same amount of potatoes in chunks. A surprising fact is that the very act of turning the vegetable into mash alters its caloric density. It is much easier to consume a larger amount of carbohydrates when the food is in mashed form. For example, a cup of cassava mash contains approximately 45 g of carbohydrates, almost double what most people with diabetes should consume in a single meal. The most intriguing aspect of mashes is how they affect the insulin response. Due to their refined texture, mashes are digested and absorbed much more quickly than whole vegetables, potentially causing more pronounced and sudden glycemic spikes. It's like sending a tsunami of glucose into our bloodstream. One option is to mix less starchy vegetables into the traditional mash. For example, a mash that combines cauliflower with a small amount of potato can provide the desired texture with a significantly lower glycemic impact. A little-known trick is to add healthy fats and fibers to the mash. Including extra virgin olive oil, unsweetened cream, or even cream cheese can help slow down the absorption of carbohydrates. Some people also add crushed chia seeds to increase the fiber content. The temperature of the mash can also make a difference. Mashes served warm or at room temperature tend to have a lesser impact on blood sugar compared to those served very hot. This is because the lower temperature can affect the speed of carbohydrate digestion. Who hasn't been tempted by those colorful, crispy vegetable chips, especially when they're marketed as healthy alternatives to traditional chips? For people with diabetes, however, these seemingly harmless snacks can be just as challenging as their conventional potato counterparts. Many do not realize that during the dehydration or frying process to make chips, the sugars and carbohydrates in the vegetables are concentrated into a much smaller space. For example, a 30 g serving of sweet potato chips can contain the carbohydrate equivalent of an entire sweet potato. With a glycemic index that can reach up to 70, these snacks can cause significant spikes in blood glucose. Cassava chips are particularly deceptive. A small serving can contain up to 25 g of carbohydrates, practically without any fiber to slow their absorption. The frying or baking process removes most of the water from the vegetable, leaving the carbohydrates even more concentrated. For people with diabetes, this means that even a seemingly modest amount can have a considerable impact on blood sugar levels. An intriguing aspect of beet chips is how the dehydration process concentrates their natural sugars. A fresh beet already has a considerable sugar content, but when transformed into chips, these sugars become much more concentrated. Add to this the fact that it's very easy to consume large amounts due to their reduced size. Chips made from leafy vegetables, such as kale or romaine lettuce, have a much lower impact on blood glucose. When prepared at home in the oven or dehydrator, with minimal oil and seasoned with herbs and spices, they can satisfy the craving for something crunchy without compromising glycemic control. A little-known trick is how the preparation method can make a difference. Chips baked at a low temperature for a longer time tend to preserve more nutrients and may have a less dramatic impact on blood sugar levels compared to those fried. Additionally, adding a pinch of cinnamon or turmeric can help moderate the glycemic response. Portion size is also crucial. A practical tip is to divide the chips into very small individual portions, no more than a handful, and always combine them with proteins, such as a small portion of unsweetened cheese or nuts, to help slow the absorption of carbohydrates. When we think of dehydrated vegetables, we often associate them with a healthy and convenient snack option. However, for those living with diabetes, this seemingly simple preservation process can create a surprising nutritional trap. What happens during dehydration is almost magical, but not always beneficial for glycemic control. Sun-dried tomatoes are a perfect example of this transformation. A fresh tomato has a relatively low glycemic index, but when dehydrated, its natural sugars concentrate dramatically. A single cup of sun-dried tomatoes can contain up to 30 g of carbohydrates, the equivalent of several fresh tomatoes. For people with diabetes, this concentration can pose a significant challenge for blood glucose control. Dehydrated carrots exhibit a similar phenomenon. During the dehydration process, the sugar content significantly concentrates. A cup of dehydrated carrots can contain 3 times more sugar than the same amount of fresh carrots. Intriguingly, this concentration makes it much easier to consume excessive amounts without realizing it. A little discussed aspect is how dehydration affects the speed of sugar absorption. Without the water and with fibers partially altered by the process, the carbohydrates in dehydrated vegetables are absorbed much more quickly by the body. It's like consuming a super concentrated version of the original vegetable. One option is to partially rehydrate the vegetables before consumption, which can help restore some of the volume and reduce the concentration of sugars per serving. Additionally, combining small amounts with proteins and good fats can help moderate their impact on blood glucose. A little-known trick is how the dehydration temperature can affect the final result. Vegetables dehydrated at low temperatures, below 45 degrees Celsius, retain more of their natural enzymes and may have a less dramatic impact on blood sugar levels. However, this method requires more time and care in preparation. An interesting discovery is that some vegetables respond better to dehydration than others in terms of glycemic impact. For example, vegetables with low water content and naturally low sugar, such as some herbs and leafy greens, can be safer options when dehydrated. For many people, a glass of fresh vegetable juice seems the very definition of health in a glass. However, for those living with diabetes, this seemingly virtuous drink can hide some unpleasant surprises. The process of turning solid vegetables into liquids creates fundamental changes in how our body processes their nutrients and sugars. Carrot juice is a perfect example of this transformation. While a raw carrot has a glycemic index of 16, its juice can reach a glycemic index of 43 or more. A surprising revelation is that a 250 milliliters glass of carrot juice can contain the sugars of 3 to 4 large carrots, a quantity we would rarely eat at once in its solid form. Beet juice, often praised for its cardiovascular health benefits, presents a similar challenge. A medium glass can contain up to 22 g of carbohydrates, most of which are natural sugars that, without the fiber of the whole beet, are rapidly absorbed by the body. For people with diabetes, this can result in significant and unexpected glycemic spikes. What makes vegetable juices particularly treacherous is the absence of natural fibers. When we extract just the juice, we leave behind most of the fibers that would normally slow down the absorption of sugars. It's like removing the brake system of a car. The nutrients and sugars enter the bloodstream at high speed. One option is to dilute the juice with water or a small amount of coconut water and add some ground chia or flaxseed to reintroduce fibers. Another alternative is to limit oneself to a very small portion, 60 to 90 milliliters, as part of a meal that includes proteins and good fats. A little-known trick is how the timing of consumption can make a difference. Consuming vegetable juice immediately after physical exercise, when insulin sensitivity is naturally increased, can result in a lesser impact on blood sugar levels. However, moderation is still crucial. A fascinating discovery is how different combinations of vegetables can affect the glycemic impact of the juice. Adding green vegetables like spinach or cucumber can help reduce the concentration of sugars per serving, although careful control of the quantities is still necessary. Who isn't tempted by that steaming dish of vegetables topped with golden cheese and creamy sauce? For people with diabetes, however, this seemingly innocent preparation can represent a real challenge for glycemic control, and not just because of the vegetable itself, but because of the whole combination of ingredients involved. Many people do not realize how the process of gratinating can completely transform the nutritional profile of vegetables. When we prepare a gratinated vegetable dish, we often add white sauce, bechamel, which is basically a combination of flour, butter, and milk. A single serving of white sauce can add up to 15 g of carbohydrates to the dish, not counting the carbohydrates from the vegetable itself. The cheese topping, while delicious, adds another layer of complexity for people with diabetes. While the cheese itself has few carbohydrates, the combination of saturated fats with the carbohydrates from the sauce and vegetables can prolong the elevation of blood glucose levels. A surprising fact is that this combination can keep sugar levels elevated for up to 4 to 6 hours after the meal. The process of gratinating also affects the way vegetables are digested. The prolonged cooking necessary for gratinating makes the carbohydrates more readily available, raising the glycemic index of the dish. For example, a serving of cauliflower gratin may have a significantly higher glycemic impact than the same amount of steamed cauliflower. One option is to create lighter versions using almond cream or cashew cream as the base for the sauce, instead of traditional bechamel. These alternatives not only reduce carbohydrates, but also add healthier fats and plant proteins to the dish. A little-known trick is how the choice of cheese can make a difference. More aged and intense cheeses, such as Parmesan or Pecorino, allow you to use less quantity to achieve the same flavor impact, thus reducing the total calories and impact on blood sugar. Additionally, these cheeses have a lower lactose content than fresher cheeses. The temperature and time of gratination are also crucial. Gratinating at a higher temperature for less time not only preserves more nutrients from the vegetables, but also results in less conversion of starch into simple sugars. A tip is to pre-cook the vegetables lightly by steaming before gratinating, thus reducing the time needed in the oven.